is Courtney Starhart here with Tyhson Banighen. We are going to be talking bear medicine and trends. It's fall. It seems like to connect with everybody. So welcome, Tyhson. It's nice to see you.
It's good to be here in the midst of autumn.
In the midst of what have you been doing today?
I've been processing grapes. We just took grapes off the vine. We only to have half of them off the vine, but I learned that you need to be processing grapes within a couple hours of picking them. So we only picked enough to keep us busy for the morning, and we've done, I think, about 8 quarts of grape juice. And oh my goodness, it's so powerful. It's just like drinking pure light. So, and we had a glass halfway through processing, and we have another whole batch to go. So, yeah, it's grape harvest time. It's really exciting to see how the grapes are coming. I learned how to prune them, so they're much more productive this year. And I think I have another download of how to do it even better next year. So, every year is an improvement as I get to tune into the devic energy of each plant and also go on and Google and learn what each plant wants. So that's exciting.
Time of year. Means a lot of grad of Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is a traditional holiday. I hate to borrow. It's no longer in style. Is Thanksgiving or was it ever?
Yeah, Thanksgiving is coming up. My birthday is usually around Thanksgiving, so I think it's my birthday is on the 12th, and I think Thanksgiving will be the following weekend. So I guess it's upcoming weekend. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. Ours is a little different than yours. I think you have it at a different time, don't you?
Yeah, ours is farther into November. Ours is in November.
Right.
It's now
Yeah.
become a for because now it is People's Day or Indigenous during time, rather kind of the pretend thing that we have, colonial.
I'm wondering whether the live stream is okay on Facebook. Is there any way that you can check?
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay.
Anyway, you're breaking up. So I think it's really interesting. The Thanksgiving for the founding of America and the forefathers is really, the story isn't. I think it's true. They never would have made it through the first winter without the First Nations people helping them put up the food for the winter, and probably had no idea what a Canadian winter was on the East Coast near Plymouth where they landed. So Thanksgiving really has part of recognition of the intimate connection between the two cultures that's really necessary for survival, even at this time. And we're still working out that relationship, and it's still pretty bumpy. We haven't learned how to learn from each other yet. So, yeah. So the Thanksgiving is really not just the pumpkin pie and the turkey and all that. It really has to do with forgiveness about what was and gratitude for the abundance that the earth is providing us, and preparing for storing away food for the winters, particularly if you have a homestead or you're part of a community or living off the land. This is the busy time where your whole summer's work gets processed by canning and freezing and preserving. So it's a beautiful time. It's a time of gathering, right, before we do the inward work that comes in the winter.
Yeah, every time, once we have the ability to kind of hibernate, sit with a lot of the things that have happened. I know in a lot of the Southers, it's a time for it's a time for playing games, thing. Beautiful time to go within, what we want to keep, and sometimes that's represent our stores, like you were saying, and it also has to last us over winter. Interesting process of looking at how many beans you have. In our case, thinking about eat and how much you have here, and also looking at what maybe some things did better than that. Maybe you don't want to plant, but you want to plant another of those beans that you don't want to. You consume it and process it in the garden the next year. To talk
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
what it means. We're live on Facebook and everything. The
Yeah,
only thing that's going on is we're not
sorry, go ahead.
side by. Yeah, when you have to pop you up on the screen, it's your turn. So
Yeah, so the thing about this time is also you look at what worked in the garden, what didn't work, what bared, what needs more energy, what needs more time, or what needs more water, or what needs more fertilizer. When did it fully ripen before the frost? The frost isn't here yet. We're about 30 days away, or maybe 15 to 30 days away from our first frost. But just looking at what would work better next year and making the notes so that we don't forget. So, for example, I think next time pruning the leaves off the grapes to let more sun in to ripen them, so that they can be more, so they can be bigger would be more important. And I didn't do that. Although this year I learned how to prune them properly, which I didn't the year before. So it's really, the garden is an exciting place to make that connection with all the living forces, all the deviant energetic forces that surround us. And as Anastasia said in The Ringing Cedar, that there's nothing more powerful than producing food in your own garden, because when things ripen, that's exactly the time at which you should be eating them for the maximum nutritional value. So now's the time to do a grape fast. Now's the time to drink lots of grapes. And yes, we store some for the winter, but this is the time in which to deal with the abundance of the grapes. So yeah, well, I haven't done a grape fast, but maybe that's on the agenda.
And that would probably be cleansing, especially if you left the skins on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So this way we juice them all, but it also takes part of the skins. And then I'm going to take the skins and the seeds, and then I'm going to put them in the dryer and make the grape leather out of them and see how that works, right? Which may or may not be tasty. So we'll see. It's a big experiment, right? And if that works, then we haven't wasted any of the grapes. We'll be able to consume all of it. Because they say grape seeds are very, very good for you. So why not?
Definitely. I have in the little um, transformation, um, um, and the concept of this to it comes up in mythology a lot. We have a retreat coming almost full. Uh, it's interesting how we can use the seasons to accentuate our own individual, though that is a more general process applies to us.
Yeah, I think that that's really important. I mean, when we talk about autumn and the gathering of the food that we produce in the summer, as we go into the winter, what do we want to take into the winter? What do we want to prepare for? What sort of firewood do we want to burn in the winter? What sort of things don't we want to take in the winter? So it's a great time to declutter, right? And because you're going to be uh, spending more times inside. So what books do you want to read? What do you want to do on your inner journey of discovery? And you get more of a chance to also attune to the flow of the seasons in the winter, in the sense that for me, it seems like the moon is much more. I don't know, seems to have more effect on me in the winter. Maybe it's because it's reflecting off the snow. Maybe because it's so cold out. Maybe it's because like the stars pop out of the sky. But it feels as though all the nature elemental forces, even though they're asleep, what is available for us is really still really, really powerful. So there's power in that stillness. There's power in the silence. There's power in the inner silence. It's the time to go deep within the soul in meditation and the inner questing. So, yeah, the inner journey, right? The inner journey of discovery. That's the time, right?
Definitely the time for the inner. We use a lot of, so this time of year, a lot of the talking about bear stories, and it's interesting during the year. We kind of gather up our stories, maybe um, in experiences, and that this go into or an underworld where does that, because we're not okay when we're talking when sense we're talking about people who are livable communities, right? Or
Right.
people who have 9 to 5 jobs just go on as if nothing ever happened. The reason why people also get because they're not in. But if you are in tune with the seasons, you're with these outdoors. Moon is interesting. Moon here in summertime, because the leaves are on all used to living in the desert. It's the first forest, and so I'm not as much in touch with the see them. But in winter, we can also really the celestial energy plug into that.
Right. I
That you
agree.
use where you about how to use your transformation for personal growth.
Yeah, for me, I've been fortunate enough in the two main places that I've lived for extended periods of time have the light of the moon comes in. So I get to track the moon through its phases from my bedroom. So one of them had a skylight, so the moon would go across the skylight as it went through its quarters and became full. And where I am now, I have a sliding glass door, so it's from the ceiling to the floor. So I get to track the moon, or the moon literally enlightens or lightens up the bedroom. So the moon and the energy of the moon is really important to me. And yes, it would be even more powerful to sleep outside in the full moon or tracking the moon. This is the second best aspect, is to have the moon shining on you while you sleep. At least for me, I found that really, really important, that lunar connection, right?
Yeah, the lunar connection is really each phase of the moon in our traditions. The phase where the moon should be a time when all to their fullness, time for getting rid of things that, so that's an interest. So let's talk about transformation. I'm interested in perspective. When you work with people, I know retreats are pretty much all, um, they're looking for experience, they're looking for help blocking themselves from things. Sometimes when people don't do the work, they have kind of a disappointment. They get back home to their lives. They're maybe crankier than before because what's really there. And if they don't have good spiritual practice, I find that they're almost worse. What when you work with people doing
Yeah, it was hard to hear you to say, but the whole thing about transformation for me is that, well, I think the seasonal transformation is important to do the ceremonies of the solstices and equinoxes and across quarters, I think are really important. So like Halloween is, I don't even know how to say it, Sarahan. So it's been taken over by, witches and goblins and ghosts and things that go bump in the night. But in actual fact, it is a really important time in the evolution of consciousness. So in our own inner consciousness as well. So the cross quarters are just as equally as powerful as the solstices and the equinoxes. So honoring them, it reconnects us to the inner pattern of our activation of what we need to go through in transformation. So the closer we can align by doing ceremony to the elemental forces of nature, the more we open our hearts and become one with that evolutionary consciousness on the planet. When we do that and open our heart, then we are guided and life becomes much easier. It's like we're in the flow. We become sustained by the whole evolutionary force, and things have a more meaning in our life and less struggle and less strife. So it's the same with the moon. There's a time in the moon in which in the new moon, we set new objectives. In the full moon, we harvest it. And in the last quarter, we clean things up about what worked and what didn't work, just like we're doing now in the garden, what worked and what didn't work. So the moon provides minor cycles within the seasonal cycles or the cycles of the sun. So the two are really what's so important. And of course, that's the basis of the Mayan calendar or any, calendar of indigenous people that was important for them, as whether they was using a medicine wheel with stones on the horizon, or whether it was dolmens or whatever. These structures in the landscape helped them attune to the forces of nature so they knew when to harvest, when to plant, when to do the deep meditation, when to go inwardly, and when to come up and be enlightened by the morning rising sun. Really, that's what enlightenment was, certainly for the Mayans, as they spent a considerable amount of time underground doing their inner work, and then at the actual right time would come up, and as the sun rose, that download of sacred sun energy would enlighten their kundalini and give them a cosmic experience of being one with all of creation. So our culture is really to separate itself from nature, and therefore we're separated from our own inner nature. And the way to regain our transformation in my world is to help people reconnect to these natural cycles, to remember there's no way that we can divorce ourselves from nature. And if we think that we can, then there's consequences, because anything we create or manifest that's not aligned with nature is doomed for decay and destruction, whether it's a social, political, economic, cultural system, it has no longevity. So learning how to come in tune with nature is fundamental for personal transformation, societal transformation, and planetary evolution as a species. So that's how I see transformation. And then back to the bear, because I want to honor the bear. The bear has a lot of energy, very similar to a human. I remember with the First Nations people I was around at a time that there was this young man with long hair, First Nation, and he's beating on his drum, just pounding away, right? And singing at the top of his voice. And his dad leans over to me and he says, he's in his bear phase, right? So it really stuck with me that phase of becoming self-actualized, self-realization is I'm important. I'm standing in my culture. I'm standing in my spirit, and I know how to do this. And I want to be recognized as a warrior. And can you see me for who I am? That's the bear phase, right? And I think that needs to be honored, because that's really when the father can turn to the son and say, that was a great job. You did a really fantastic job. So then he can let the bear phase calm down and let the spirit animate him, not, oh my God, I have to do this right in order to be recognized by my culture, my tradition, my family. I can just be guided to beat the drum, and I can relax and be guided by spirit. So anyway, that's a few thoughts that I have on the whole process of the bear, energy, and transformation. Hopefully that was helpful.
That was, I had never heard that bear phase of life. That's, during those teenage years where we're trying to fit in our culture, full time in life, of what's going on in society, the lack of appropriate leadership, culture, the lack of for which way we go as human beings. My kids grow up in this culture has been really interesting. It's something that we talk a lot to. We talk about, creating a seed for a new society, and if we were able to do that, there is really enough momentum to be able to organize, purchasing land, look land, whatever dog. Sorry, I had to say that, but people have a lot of, because it's been so long since that nobody really knows what that would look like. A big part of the plant medicine is it elders' mind in our lineage was mainstream people for nature, a return, and out of the way, so that in harmony together with nature. If you wouldn't mind with community as well, and about how things have been, a broad topic, but I'm throwing it.
Yeah, I didn't hear all that, but yeah, community, whether it's a community of interest or whether it's a clan membership or tribal membership or an intentional community of like-minded people, the most important thing is, why are you coming together? What service to the greater whole brings you to the land? And that's really key. So whether it's a survival as a culture, which is a clan relationship, when certain clans have certain functions, in the whole tribal history, Bear Clan has its certain things that it brings, the Turtle Clan brings it, and they have different responsibilities and different medicines to keep the whole kinship or the whole tribe in harmony with nature, or the Aboriginals in Australia, were walking on the walking on the land, and feeling the ley lines, the energy lines through your feet, and the storytelling of the paintings on the rock, of the oral history is how you survive in the desert, knowing, receiving guidance of where you will find the food and where you'll find the water and the tubers to eat. So this uh, cultural phenomena, or this cultural ancestral knowledge, is really, really important. And the exciting things, according to Anastasia and the Ringing Cedars, is it's still really in our DNA. Like, the ancestral wisdom is still accessible when we get out of our heads and in our hearts and let go. We can be guided by our ancestors, actually visiting us through ceremony, or we can be informed by the plant spirits and the work that you do will bring the medicine from our forefathers through to us. And so that we will remember our relationship to nature and all the healing herbs, and how to process food, and how to provide for our family, out of the system that binds us into having to make a livelihood, which isn't really a livelihood at all. It's more enslaved to a status quo of working hard in order to pay the bank, for the privilege of living on this planet. So our freedom and our culture and the way that we move forward really is dependent on a relationship with the land and reestablishing that. And the thing is, it can't happen overnight. It takes time. So the fruit trees in my yard were here when I came here, and that was 17 years ago. And they must have been 10 years old before that. So, that's 20, 30 years. Yes, the pear trees are now bearing fruit. They were planted 15 years ago, and they're doing well. The grapes are already here. The blackberries have been added to, but they were here. The point I'm getting at is, establishing community takes time if you're going to be producing your own food. And that's the value of having community that can be passed on from one generation to the other. So what you're planning and putting in place in a kinship, if you're doing it from the Anastasia's point of view, on 5 acres, which is a private holding, which they're trying to do in Russia, where they don't own the land, but they have the right to the land that can be inherited, then you can pass that on to your family. So there's a lineage and the wisdom from one generation to the other. Unfortunately, in the lands that we placed in trust here that have intentional communities from the 70s that I was involved in, there is no continuity between this generation and the next, because the next generation feels called to go to the city and do all the things that they think culture will provide them from the city. So again, there's no continuity between the stewardship of the land and multi-generational stewardship through the lineage of the people that took care of it. And I think that certainly from Anastasia's point of view in the Ringing Cedars, that's the basis of community. That's the basis of society, is that continuity of working with nature from generation to generation to generation. It's like reconnecting your DNA with the DNA of the plant kingdom, the DNA of the tree, the DNA of the download from the stars in one place. So everything that's being produced is feeding you exactly what you need for your own health and well-being, and ripens at exactly the time in which you could consume it. So yes, I think community is a great way to go, but it takes time, it takes patience, it takes cycles of seasons to get it right. And so that's why I think even this little 0.8 acres I live on is maybe a training ground for people to come and learn some of the basics of community, which is really important before they go buy land. And there's things to consider when buying land. Is it southern facing? Where does the sun track? And actually camping out on the land for a period of time for one season, if you possibly can. And maybe that's why a tiny home would be good. So you know how the sun interacts with the landscape. So you don't orient your house in the wrong way or your garden in the wrong way. Anyway, there's so much to learn, but it's exciting because you're reconnecting with all the forces of creation around you and making a new multi-generational agreement with the land. And I guarantee you, the land will be excited. The devic and angelic forces will be excited to work with you and create an abundance beyond your imagination. So, yeah, that's what I have to say about community. I have a lot more to say about community, but yes, I think community is really, really important. And back to the land, that whole movement in the 60s and 70s taught us a lot about what it means to learn how to live together. I mean, there's so much that needs to be worked through. And the biggest thing is mommy and daddy issues. Trying to work out mommy and daddy issues in a community is not a pretty sight. And if you haven't worked out mommy daddy issues, you're going to be triggered. And I really encourage you to do the cleansing work, do the plant medicine, do the healing, and know that you are a sovereign human being and that you are not blaming your parents for any inadequacies, that you've been able to come to the understanding that you chose your parents and that there was lessons for you to learn in the way that they parented you, and that you can forgive your parents, so you're not trying to heal that in a community, because that just creates chaos. So anyway, that's another aspect of community. So back to you, Courtney.
I thought how we can both appear on this, at least for now. We have a system and nicely together. So, a lot of retreats actually is about mommy and daddy issue with your Canadian accent. Parent issues happens is when the medicine those things up for people, if they've done the training work and they've shown that we recommend, then gracefully, is when people are not handling a lot of projection, and people first the cry, and then the kind of prior pain around these. And it's interesting if they release it. We recommend you work, right? And the form of is either Tai Chi, Qi, these processes through your meridians, because get stuck essentially points in our energetic body. They eventually congeal but when we're working world, you can see. You can also see if people move them and they're looking, or they're going the other way, and you can almost actually see kind of fetal position called time, and we'll ask people to open up, get them breathing again. We'll use it to move that energy so that it's a little to release it. Number one is releasing the memorial issues, issues of did childhood. Well, did we get what we childhood? As Tyson said, working with ayahuasca and going, we do choose our parents and we generations, and since no, or maybe the perfect ones were taken, the that we choose for incarnation. So one of the things me was about, well, I've gotten the perfect dad in life whatsoever, but that absence of male teachers who were, I've had the plan with Patrice ratio with my two, a lot of different kung fu masters. Full. Perhaps if I had thought as a child I should have. I'm looking for that male, and I would have missed a lot. And lives a lot of times disband and get as strong. They don't become we become who've had a lot of trauma. Don't be afraid to look at your trauma to deal with it. Blessing in a lot of ways. So didn't get a dad, did get a mom, get the perfect family situation, healthy body. Telling me about how the were really well woven and balanced. So just where I am right now, everyone to be in terms of your walk, making sure that you do, making sure that you practice for gratitude, and the darkness out there, because the mirror. And I think human beings are just kind of that are drawn to fit. So we readily identify, kind of focus on a problem solving part of our biological, it's part of our DNA, right? We have to step above that programming, what we love about life, to sing to it, and to really things that we love and the things that we know. We're getting of our talk here to add to Tyhson. He's and I've learned a lot with him. So, what do you do for personal spiritual practice possible for everything to keep flowing in your life?
Yeah, that's a good question. Probably. Well, I'm in transition. So the new thing is I've realized that I've been addicted to my computer. I've been a slave to my computer, and I'm part of the 3D Anonymous Club, where I understand that it's addictive, like crack cocaine, and that I need to, stand up and say, I've been addicted to the 3D ability or belief that I have to work hard to succeed. And I'm truly sorry, but I've been free of that bondage for maybe the last 7 days. Anyway, I'm joking around, but it's true. So one of the things I was fortunate about is uh, there was a tiff going on in the cottage and between a man and a woman. And by the way, that's happening everywhere that I can see. Is if you've got stuff, SHIT, to shift, now it's going to come to the surface now. At least where I live, everybody I know is going through major transformation. What they haven't dealt with is going to come up, and people and that I love and dearly are also checking out and leaving the planet. So this is not a time that you can just hide your light under a bushel basket or pretend that the trauma that you have with your mommy daddy issues or whatever can just be avoided. It can't. It's going to come up in your face in one way or the other. So do the work and get the results. It's really, really important. Anyway, what happened is because I couldn't get into my office, I set up my bedroom. And in my bedroom, like I say, I can see the moon coming up over the horizon and lighting and coming through my window. Guess what? I get to see the morning sun. So now I get up, it's dark, I make my coffee, I go into my bedroom, I have a comfortable chair, I watch the sun come up and light up the sacred mountain, Mount Ida. I bless the mountain and I read for 2 hours and watch the sun come up. And I have to say that's been so powerful, right? To allow myself the time to be with Mother Nature. So that's one. The other is taking the time to meditate. So we've been having some very deep meditations here, very transformative, which allows also guidance to come through. And then the last thing I'd like to say around all that is that I was gifted with the opportunity when we opened up my sister's jewelry box. My sister's passed on, and we were cleaning up the energy because it's fall, moving out energy that needs to be passed on. What energy do we want to take into this winter? And so we were going through the jewelry box, and my grandmother's pearls were there. And my friend Aliana, who's staying here, picked them up and immediately got contact with my grandmother. So my grandmother had lots to say to me that she wanted me to know about my next step. So why is this important? It's important that if you are an Indigenous person, and we're all Indigenous at some level, you need to have, or you don't need, but I'll highly recommend you work with an elder, right? With a shaman, male or female, and you choose who that is, because that cultural connection, that ceremonial connection, whether it's your grandmother, your lineage, or somebody else's lineage, because they're a shaman or they're an elder in their lineage, is really, really important. You need that guidance at this amazing time of personal and planetary transformation. So receiving guidance and being open to listen to it from our ancestors to reactivate and refire our DNA. So we have the wisdom of our ancestors to go through this massive change where we're going to have to learn how to live off the land. Once again, we're going to have to learn how to feed ourselves. And the world that we know, the structure of cities and roads and everything, I feel will no longer be here. So we have to learn how to regain that wisdom, and the sooner the better.
That is wonderful advice for. It's a great note to leave things um, about a lot in our land, where, and all of that. Um, that we all still have enough time left on, let's see the cracks in the infrastructure society are definitely and certainly here it's just a fact that you ever by definition of our way of life and satisfying. I was talking to a young man who we've hired to do news, and his point of view, he's out and doing all kinds of farm work and a lot closer to nature than and he's just satisfying life is without nature, of the malaise and the human beings experience. It's taken away from mothers, and community to eat real food, stuff that we get in grocery stores for the most consider food. When I'm market, that's real moving. To encourage everyone over the weekend and to your youth, allow all of these to dissipate and ask important themselves in a very long time and important to them about life and what I would encourage you in this season of nation to add the important connect with the earth, and if you're here or abroad, want to get out of it, and what is it that because with the medicine as it is with everything, it's two-way street that we have with Mother Earth for a few generations, giving the love to her that she deserves, vis-a-vis our thing at the equinox, at the moon, at the new moon, really be to this pulse of Mother. We'll do a lot to bolster you're healthy. So health, wealth, and happiness weekend and at all times. Seeing you again, Tyson and I, old-fashioned, peaceful talks. Every other. Thank you very much for listening. Tyson, have a minute to say last words for you.
Yeah, just thank you everybody for the opportunity to speak what I think is important. As an elder, the most important thing is to to pass on the wisdom that took years to accumulate, so the next generation doesn't have to go through the same learning curve if they're willing to listen. They can shorten the period quicker and faster to become more to return to a state of more harmonious connection with nature. So that's part of what I feel now is passing on that ability as an energy healer, a dowser, an energy detective, working with the plant medicines, working with the garden energies, with the angelic forces, then the devic energies, and learning how to literally create with my own hands and the help of others heaven on earth. And we get to do this in this next evolutionary process. We are the ones that are creating heaven on earth. So learning how to do that and the skills necessary to do that so that you're in harmony with what you create, I think is really an exciting time to be on this planet. So bless you all.
And beauty for your loved ones. And we'll see you.